Remember Dynasty Warriors 9? Sadly, we do. The Dynasty Warriors franchise had never been a paragon of quality in games, but up to a certain point, it had never failed to deliver at least a certain level of unabashed enjoyment. In 2018, however, when Dynasty Warriors 9 came along, the Koei Tecmo series hit its lowest point ever, emerging as a widely criticized title for everything, from its dull combat to its bland and shoehorned open world design. As anyone who played the game will tell you, including the staunchest of Dynasty Warrior fans, all of that criticism was well earned. At times, you definitely see games falling victim to a bandwagon mentality that maybe takes criticism further than a game might deserve, but when Dynasty Warriors 9 is described as one of the worst high-profile releases in recent memory, it's hard to argue with that. What should have been an open-world revitalization of an aging franchise instead turned out to be its worst mainline outing ever, to the extent that it's almost seemed to entirely miss the point of what makes Dynasty Warriors great most of the time. Sadly, that's been our lingering memory of the series for a while now. 2022's Dynasty Warriors 9 Empires didn't do much to rectify things, but thankfully, at long last, it looks like the beloved franchise might finally be on the comeback trail. In May of 2024, Koei Tecmo announced Dynasty Warriors Origins, a game billed as a return to the roots outing for the long-running series, and each time we have seen more of it, as we get closer and closer to its looming release, each time it has looked like an increasingly exciting prospect, especially for Dynasty Warrior fans who are longing for a return to the series' golden days.
Take pride in your valor. We cannot allow the likes of them to divert our attention. Leave them to our allies and push on! Start the advance!
Eschewing its predecessor's open-world structure, Dynasty Warriors Origins is instead going to adopt a world map structure, with players being allowed to travel to and mess about in maps of varying sizes, both big and large, both linear and more open-ended. It's a structure that will be way more familiar to fans of the series compared to Dynasty Warrior 9's bland take on open-world design, and that in and of itself is enough to excite fans of the franchise. But of course, that's not the only reason Origins has piqued our curiosity.
Pass through Eschewing Gate, and then on to Loyang. The lords are advancing. We must keep pace. Onwards! Push! Forward! We must reach Eschewing Gate first!
Dynasty Warriors combat has obviously always been its biggest draw, and in that department, Origins is looking like it's hitting all of the right notes. It probably makes sense to lead with developer Omega's Force ambition to finally be able to display as many as 10,000 enemies on screen at once with Dynasty Warriors Origins. Even its less busy scenes will in fact see players going up against much larger groups of foes than in previous titles. Coming up against massive hordes and enemies and mowing them down like an unstoppable force of nature has always been one of Dynasty Warriors' ups, so it's encouraging to see Origin focusing so much of its energies on that area. In fact, if hands-on impressions for the title and the extensive gameplay footage revealed for it thus far are anything to go by, it also looks like Origins is going to bring back some of that relatively stiffer challenge of the previous Dynasty Warrior games. Obviously, this has always been a series about delivering strong power fantasies to players, so you're not going to find From Software levels of difficulty in a Dynasty Warrior title by any means. But with time, the series has lost more and more of its edge, to the extent that even though combat has almost always remained fun, after a certain point it felt like it had almost lost all of its bite.
We cannot allow the likes of them to divert our attention. Leave them to our allies and push on! Start the advance!
Cannot hold out for much longer.
No matter how you
The enemy officer has been defeated.
This appears to be as far as we go.
With Dynasty Warriors Origins, though players will still have the option to stick with lower difficulties and plow through endless hordes of foes with reckless abandon, ramping up the difficulty will result in an experience that pushes back. Based on what's been revealed so far, it seems like several enemy types won't be mere pushovers anymore, and actually making use of tactical abilities, managing the morale of your army, and smartly commanding the soldiers under your command will be a big part of the gameplay loop. There's obviously inherent appeal to Dynasty Warriors' brand of mindless button-mashing action, but it's good to know that Origins is going to be a little less one-dimensional than that for those who wish it to be, at least. Meanwhile, the game's different take on the series' tried-and-true narrative formula is also looking interesting. Dynasty Warriors games are, of course, always retellings of the well-worn romance of the Three Kingdoms story, and that much obviously isn't going to change with Origins. What is changing is how much of the story the game is covering, with Omega Force deciding to only cover a part of the Three Kingdoms story, rather than all of it in its entirety. Now, more focused on telling the story of the rise of the eponymous Three Kingdoms, rather than covering the entire saga, the much more zoomed-in tale of the game will be able to dive deeper into the characters and events in a way that past games just weren't able to do. Meanwhile, Origins will also feature younger versions of plenty of well-known characters, which means fans of the series, or really of that period of the time as a whole, will be able to see familiar personalities through a different lens, which always has potential to be interesting when done right, at least.
Governor of Shandong, I have come to join the alliance against Dongzhou.
You are most welcome, Lord Jianyang. Show us what you're capable of.
Another area where the game is looking impressive is its visuals. No, maybe it hasn't taken our breath away with spectacular next-gen graphics, but we're obviously not going to hold every single game that releases to that standard. On its own merits, Dynasty Warriors Origins touts great graphics, and that's doubly true if you're familiar with the series standards that have traditionally been in the department in the past. Don't get me wrong, it's not like Dynasty Warrior games were consistently ugly or anything along those lines, but without a shadow of a doubt, Origins is promising to be the series' best-looking outing by a country mile. From the character models to the detailed and varied environments to the enemies, the large armies you take on, and the way that the explosive action is presented on screen, the game is looking impressive in more ways than one. Whether Dynasty Warriors Origins can touch the highest highs of the franchise from 4 to 5 to 8, or whatever one strikes your fancy, remains to be seen. And with a series that has had as many installments as this one has, it can definitely be difficult to keep hitting the highest levels of quality after a certain point, because of diminishing returns if nothing else. But after the disastrous misstep that was Dynasty Warriors 9, and a few years of rest and recuperations afterwards, the series is back with what's looking like the exact right sort of comeback that's needed. Dynasty Warriors Origins could still end up disappointing in ways that we haven't been able to foresee based on its pre-launch coverage, but for now, it's looking like that classic, adrenaline-fueled Muso action game that fans have been starved of for so long. And that's incredibly exciting.
I need to retreat.
Let's get serious.
Hey, did you know that we at GamingBolt upload new videos every day? Stick around, drop a like, subscribe, and hit that bell. And let us know what kind of content you'd like to see in the future with a comment below.